Hi everyone, welcome to day 4 of our narrative writing of a story. Today we're going to focus on continuing to use transitions, but now we're at the end of our story. How are we going to bring this story to a close? So we're still going to focus on using transitions to show the reader that our story is coming to an end. Some words and phrases that we might be able to use are words like finally, a phrase like in the end, last, at last, or at the end. These are not the only options that we have, but those are just some examples if you need some extra help. So throughout the week, I've been working on my narrative topic about the backyard adventure, and today I'm finally at the end where my adventure with Marley and the snake that he discovered in the backyard has to come to an end. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that ending piece, thinking about transition words and phrases that I might be able to use to show the reader that my story is coming to an end. You'll notice that I have all this extra space on this line right here, but again, because we're starting a new paragraph, we want to show the reader that we're ending one paragraph and beginning another paragraph. So we drop down to the next line. We still are going to use that 2-finger indenting spacing. And then I want to think about a word or a phrase that I can use to say that I'm coming to an end of the action in my story. So I kind of like the phrase at last because this really shows the reader finally. Finally, at last. Now this is a phrase that it can't stand by itself, so I need to put a comma here to signal the reader that there's more to come. I have to show the reader what happened at last. So at last, the snake, it was able to get over the brick wall, was able to get over, I think I could fit that word over in there, over the brick wall, and I need to drop down to the next line, over the brick wall and slither to safety, slither to safety. Now, that would be one sentence that I can use to just say this is how the story ended, but I want to continue just a little bit to explain the snake was all good and well, but what about Marley and what about me? Were we okay? So once the snake had slithered away to safety, I didn't just run inside, I sprinted. Now that I couldn't see the snake anymore, I sprinted inside. So I sprinted inside, and because I was finally able to move. Remember, I was frozen in fear of seeing the snake, but now that it was gone, I was finally able to move my feet from where I stood frozen to getting into the safety of my house. Let's see, period. That's the end of my sentence. I'm okay. Marley was still pretty happy about this whole situation, so he happily, and he didn't just run in behind me, he didn't walk behind me, he trotted. This was a good day for Marley. He had an awesome adventure. He thought this was great, but Mrs. Duncan and the snake, I'm pretty sure, were both not having a good adventure in the backyard. Let's see, so he trotted happily behind me. Period. And so one last sentence that I could put to finally put an end to this piece, I'm not going to just put the phrase the end. We're going to move beyond that as first graders, almost going into second grade. So the way that I can just end this piece is my normal afternoon. Because remember, that's where the story had taken place. When the story had taken place, my normal afternoon turned into, remember the topic of my piece was the backyard adventure, and I had told you at the beginning of this it could have been a good adventure, it could have been a bad adventure, and for me this became a terrifying adventure, turned into a, I'm going to say frightening, and I can sound it out a little bit, frightening adventure for me. Let's see, and for Marley, and an exciting one for Marley. So that's how I'm going to end that piece, because that's the very end of my story. Nothing else happened after that. So when I go back and I reread and I look for those transition phrases, the way that I started this paragraph was by telling the reader, at last. This was the end of my story. I even used the word like finally able to move, so that I know this action has come to an end of my story. So your job today is to write the end of your narrative story, continuing to use those transitions to bring your story to a close. Happy writing. Bye.